Today's daf is daf Chavches. Today's daf is daf Chavches, and we're going to start on the top of the Amud. Parsha Gedola Kormosa Bishnayim. B'Shachris u'B'Musaf u'B'Mincha Korin al PM ki Korines Shma. And the Mishnah tells us that when they had to read a parsha, and there were two units in the parsha, the larger unit was divided amongst two olim, two people got to read that, and therefore they were able to be mashlim three aliyos. And we had a long machlokas yesterday between Rav and Shmuel about how they would divide up a 5 psukim unit into 2 units when you need 3 psukim minimum for each unit. Now, with regard to Musaf, Shachris, Musaf, and Mincha, then with regard to the Mamados, they would read it Baal Peh like you read from Kriyat Shema without a sefer. Iboilahu. Now there's an ambiguous phrase here. You don't know where to put Ube Musaf. So do you read it B'Shachris Ube Musaf and then B'Mincha Korin Al Peh? Okay, that's Hachikama B'Shachris Ube Musaf Korin also means we read the Mamados B'Sefer and then B'Mincha Korin also Baal Peh. Oh, Dilma, perhaps Hachikama. Here's how we have to read it. It all depends where you put the comma. It's Shachris Korin Osa B'Sefer, and there you put the comma. Ube Musaf Ube Mincha Korin Osa Al Peh Kikore Es Shma. So with regard to Tfilas Musaf, it says Korin Al Piyam Toshma, and we're going to be poshet this suffix from a brisa. The Sanya we learned in a brisa. B'Shachris u'B'Musaf. So underline the word B'Musaf. It's quite explicit in the brisa. Nichnasim Beis HaKnesses v'Korin, meaning they read from the Sefer Torah in the Beis HaKnesses Kedech Shekorin Kol Shana. Every Kriyas Torah. So that it's quite clear that with regard to Musaf, like Shachris, we will read the Torah from a Sefer Torah as a tzibur. U'B'Mincha Yachid Kore Osal Peh. That's when we allow the individual to read it by heart. And the assumption is he reads it in the Beis HaKnesses. He's motzi the Rab Yidei Chavasam. He becomes the Shliach Tzibur on behalf of the entire Tzibur. And that's the sheet of the Tanna Kama, even though he's not reading it from a Sefer. Amar Rav Yossi, what are you talking about? V'chi yachid yachol likros divrei Torah al peh b'tzibur? Where do we find that a yachid could read something by heart and be motzi the tzibur? The Torah says at the end of Parshas Mishpatim, "Ksov lecha es hadvarim ha'eleh," and the Gemara in Gittin Daf Samach Darshins this pasuk that Psukei Torah cannot be read Baal Peh. You have to read it mitoch haksav. Dvarim shebechsav iatorach shoyl omer Baal Peh. So you're going to tell me that the Shliach Tzibur at Mincha time is going to recite the psukim in the Torah Baal Peh to be motzi the Rabbi Yidei Chavasim? It's impossible. Ella, but rather kulam nichnasim. Everyone gathers together in the Beis HaKnesses. V'korin osa. Each person reads it individually. Not as a Chovas Tzibur. Chovas Tzibur, to be motzi the Tzibur, we must have a Sefer Torah. It's got to be mitoch haksav. But if individuals are reading it by themselves, Ruvain for himself, Shimon for himself, and so forth and so on, then Al Peh kamo shekorim b'shma. So there's no Isur, apparently, of reading Psukim Al Peh unless he's being motzi acherim, motzi the Rabbim, the Tzibur Yidei Chavasam. But anyway, it's clear from this brisa that in Musaf they would read from a Sefer Torah just like they did Shachris. And now we move on to the next part of the Mishnah. So we're approximately, I would say, 12, 13 lines down from the top of Chav Ches Amud Aleph. Kimi and Koah. Kol Yom Sheyesh Bo Halel Ein Bo Mamad. We're so involved in reciting Halel, we don't have time for the Arichas Tefillah of Mamados. And Rabbi Yoshua is quoted as saying that Korban Eitzim Ein B'Ne'ilah. So why is it that Rabbi Yeshua, with regard to Korban Eitzim, he's going to override and trump the Maimad of Ne'ilah, but not of Mincha? He's only willing to do away with, or shall we say, obviate the requirement of Ma'amados with regard to Ne'ilah, but not with regard to Mincha. So the Gemara asks, "My hefresh bein zel is that? What's the difference between Mincha and Ne'ilah? If a Korban Eitzim is doche and it trumps the Maimad of Ne'ilah, then why shouldn't it trump the Maimad of that Mincha?" And the Gemara answers, "Halalu midivrei Torah, v'halalu midivrei Sofrim." Mincha cannot be overridden by Korban Eitzim. Korban Eitzim is an entity which is D'Rabbanan. It's midivrei Sofrim. Mincha is Doraisa. What does that mean? Mincha is Doraisa. So as Rashi explains, Yitzchak Avinu was Mesakein Tfilas Mincha based on the Gemara Brachos Chavav, and the Gemara derives from the pasuk Vayetze Yitzchak Lasuach Basodeh Ein Sicha El Tfila, and that was Lifnos Erev. The pasuk says that was Tfilas Mincha. So Tfilas Mincha is upgraded to a status of a mitzvah chamura, and Maimad cannot be doche. In the case of Korban Eitzim, a mitzvah of Mincha Doraisa. V'halalu, but Ne'ilah, that's only Midivrei Sofrim. There's no Doraisa basis for Ne'ilah. And therefore, it's Nidche, the Mamad is Nidche. I have here in the Masifta a diagram in which he summarizes the various shitas and which carbon is the doche and which mamados are nidchim and the reason for each one. For example, he has the shita of Rabbi Akiva, the original shita of Rabbi Akiva before he rescinded it, was that a carbon musaf is doche the mamados of musaf mincha ne'ilah, and the reason for that is tirda. He's got Ben Azai who says that a carbon musaf is docha mincha but not ne'ilah. And then he has Ben Azai in the name of Rabbi Yoshua, Korban Eitzim is docha ne'ilah but not mincha. He's got Ben Azai in the name of Rabbi Yoshua, that Korban Musaf is docha the mamados of Musaf mincha ne'ilah. A Korban Eitzim is docha the mamados of Musaf mincha but not ne'ilah. And finally, Ben Azai, who says that a Korban Musaf is doche the mamados of Musaf, mincha, but not ne'ilah. But a Korban Eitzim is doche Musaf, mincha, and ne'ilah. The Mishnah says, Zman atzei hakohanim va'am. It means that certain specific families were given a specific day, a designated day, when they would bring the Korban Eitzim. They would contribute the wood for the Marach on the Mizbeach. Why do you have to tell me that the Chachamim designated certain specific times when the Mishpachos would come and bring Eitzim LeMizbeach? After all, any Yachid, any individual at any time could be Misnadev. He could take upon himself voluntarily a nedava to bring Eitzim for the Mizbeach, whatever he so desired. And this is based on a Mishnah in Shkolim in the 6th parak. So the Gemara answers, Amru, the reason why they wanted to mention by name those mishpachos and the zmanim that were determined for their mishpachos to bring Eitzim, that was all a takanas hanavim, so that no one could be docha them. No one could say, well, you know what, we want to bring the Eitzim. No. These families had those designated days. They had a monopoly on those days. And why? Why do we give them what we call first dibs, a special right to bring the Eitzim? It all has to do with those who had the guts and were motivated because of the love of God to join Ezra in that great glorious enterprise of Aliyah, of going on Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael to establish the second Commonwealth. Sha'olu b'nei Agola, when Bnei Yisrael came back from the goals of Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, lo matzu eitzim belishka, there were no eitzim to be found in the Beis Hamikdash. Amdu, there were certain families that got up on their own initiative, and we'll see their names very shortly. Visnadvu mishalahem, and they dug deep into their pockets in order to contribute the eitzim for the purpose of the Mizbeach, and therefore they were rewarded by Takanas Nevi'im, Bekach Hisnu Nevi'im Shebeneim, which Nevi'im is Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, Ezra, Nehemiah, that the reward for these Misnadvim who gave of their time and their efforts and their monies to guarantee that there would be eitzim for the Beis Hamikdash, that B'chol Hashanim, for all the years, from now until the end of time, Yizku Lahavi Eitzim L'Mizbeach Osam Hayomim Atzma, their descendants of that mishpacha would bring the eitzim on the Mizbeach on those days for all years to the future. Shafilu lishka malea eitzim, and even if when they bring the eitzim, the lishka is already filled with eitzim, nevertheless, you elu misnadvim mishalahem. These mishpachos would volunteer and offer eitzim from their own bank account, and therefore their eitzim would go on the mizbeach before any eitzim of the lishka, as a reward, recognizing their great contribution. Shenemar, pasuk in Nehemiah, v'goralosi palnu al kurbano eitzim hakohanim al v'yim va'am lahavi l'beis alukenu u'lebeis avoseinu li'itim mizumanim shana b'shana leva'ar ala mizbeach Hashem alukenu kakosu b'sor sech. It means that they had a lottery for the years, on which day of the year each person could bring his voluntary nedava of eitzim for the mizbeach at the time of Beis Hamikdash. And the Tanai of the Nevi'im was on all the years. And they designated it to certain specific mishpachos who also sacrificed themselves out of a state of Emunah. We learned in the Mishnah that on the 15th day of Av, the Bnei Zitua, who was a son of Yehuda, the Imayim, Kohanim Uleviim, so the Bnei Gunvi, Eli, Ubnei Kotzai, Kotzai Ktzitzos, we have a family called Bnei Gunvei Eli. The Gemara is going to spend a lot of time trying to understand the name. They were also called by another name, Bnei Kotzei Ktzios. Taner Rabbanan, Ma Hayu Bnei Gunvei Eli. Who were these people called Bnei Gunvei Eli? Sounds like they were thieves. Ubnei Kotzei Ktzios, they're smashing and pounding the dates. Amru, Pam Achas, this is during the Bais Rishon period, Gozra Malchus Gzeira al Yisrael. There was a terrible Gzeira, Shelo Yaviu, Eitzim L'maroch al Gabi Mizbeach, V'shelo Yaviu Bikurim L'Yushalayim, outlawing the bringing of the new fruits, Bikurim, to Mitzrayim, from to Yushalayim. And what did this one family do to try to find a way of circumvent the Gzeira? Hoshivu prosdaos al hadrochim. The enemies stationed shomrim on the roads. to make sure and guarantee that the Jews would not go on Aliyah to Yerushalayim with Eitzim for the sake of the Mizbeach and for Peros Bikurim. Kederech Shel Shivam, Shahoshev Yerovam ben Avat. So now we go back to Yerov ben Avat. That's a very painful piece of Jewish history, because he was the Melech Yisrael and he set up Shomrim, Shelo Yalu Shivtei Yisrael, that the 10 Shvatim should not go on Aliyah to Yerushalayim l'regel. And why did he do so? He was afraid that if members of his own kingdom would come on Aliyah, then Yachzeru l'malchuso shel Rechavam ben Shlomo ben Yehuda. He was afraid that they would become dissenters and they would jump ship and join the Malchus of Rechavam. Okay, so that was the parsha of Nevam of Yerovam ben Nevat. Now getting back to our parsha, Uma Asu, what did this very significant mishpacha do? And they were Sherim, Sheba Oso Ador, V'yirei Chet, so imagine you're a God-fearing Jew, you want to bring your Bikurim, and the government doesn't allow you to do so. And they set up Shomrim, Herimu ala Shomrim. They found a way of fooling the Shomrim. What was their method? Heviu Saleh, Saleh means baskets of peros of Bikurim, Vechifum, and they covered them up with Ktzios. Ktzios are these... I said it was dates, but it's really figs. And they would dry the figs and then do a ktisha on a machteshes. They would pound it and make it into a round circle, which are called igule dvela. And so that the shomrim would not see the fruits of bikurim that are inside the sal. Unitalum, and they took these salim of peros, of Tainim Yeveshos, and they brought them to Yerushalayim for the mitzvah of Bikurim. V'alei al kisveihem. Alei is a wooden instrument that's used to pound and ground something. I think it's called a pestle. A pestle. Pestle. The other part is the mortar, I think it's called. So the Eli, which is again the kliyesh, that's the wooden thing that you pound with. Natal al kisfeim, they threw it over their shoulders to bring them up to Yerushalayim. They would serve as atzei hamarach. Came on Shigu Eitzah pros those. Now the Shomrim are going to check them out. There's a border control, so to speak. Omru lahem, the Shomrim say, where are you going? Omrim lahem, they responded, we are kosher v'yosher Jews, and lassos, we're going to make ktzios in these baskets. Shnei igule dvela b'machteshes. So they would show the officers the figs and show them the pestle and tell them they were on the way to use the pestle to crush the figs. B'machteshes. Shelefanenu, As we're going right here to this place, a close place. Ube'eli sha'al ksefenu, and we're going to use as a machteshes this Eli, which we're carrying on our shoulders. And it was a very convincing argument. And the Shomrim believed that they were telling the truth. But Kevan Sha'avru Mehen, once the Ksherim passed the Shomrim, Itrum Bisalim, they beautified these baskets because Peros Bikurim have to be beautified. And now we understand why that family is called Gonvei Eli, because they stole, meaning they fooled the Das HaShomrim al Yidei Eli. Now, the offspring throughout the history of Bayis Sheni, of this mishpacha, whenever they came up from Bavel and Aliyat Eretz Yisrael, they would voluntarily bring the eitzim for the Mizbeach. And this was at the beginning of the period of Bayis Sheni. And they would mix their logs together with Bnei Zesua ben Yehuda. And this was on the 15th of Av. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, Hein, B'nei Salmoi Hanisofasi. Meaning that there was another family that was called B'nei Salmoi Hanafosi. And apparently, as we'll soon see, they did the same thing. They were copycats. Tana Rabbanan, Mahem B'nei Salmei Hanisofes. Amru Am Achas Gazra Malchus Gzeir al Yisrael Shali Aviu Eitzim L'Maracho Shivu Prosdos Al Adrachim Kedek Shal Shiv Yeravim Ben Avad Al Adrachim Tol Yalu Yisrael L'Regel Ma Asu Yirei Chet Shebo Sadar Aviu Gzeirehem the Asu Sulamos. They brought trees and they made them into logs, and they created ladders. Hinichu osam al kisfeim. They put these ladders over their shoulders, v'holchu lahem, and they were on their way, the journey to Yerushalayim. Kevan shehigiu etzlan, when the Shomrim came to accost them, Amrulem the Shomrim asked them, Leichan atem holchim, Amrulem lahavi gozolos mishovach. There's a bird's coop over here, and we're going to use these utensils in order to bring gozlos. Shalafanenu. How so? Sulamos shal ksefenu. We're going to use the ladders that are on our shoulders, and that's going to allow us to bring gozlos. Once the officers passed them by, Pirkum, they took everything apart. They took the Sulamos apart piece by piece. Now they have Gizrei Eitzim. They view Vehelam Yushalayim, so that they would be burnt on the Mizbeh. V'aleim v'al kayotzeben. These are the Balamatim that have a Mesorah, that are part of the Mesorah, the Bnei Gun Ve'eli and the Bnei Salmoi and the Tufasi, who are Moser Nafsham ala Torah v'al Mitzvahs. So Alemu Omer Zecher Tzadik Livracha. When we mention the name of a tzaddik, we bless him, and they possessed that status of tzaddikim with their maisim tovim and Zecher Tov B'olam Al Yerovim ben Avot, the Chaver of the opposite is true. They were Mevatel Yisrael from the Kiyum HaMitzvahs. Aleim Nemar V'Shem Rishayim Yirkon. The name of the evildoers should be blotted out. The Mishnah says, B'Esrim Bo, on the 20th of Av, B'nei Pachas, Moav ben Yehuda. Let's put emphasis on the word Moav. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, B'nei Pachas, Moav ben Yehuda, Hein Hein B'nei David ben Yehuda. These are the offspring of David HaMelech. And we saw in the previous Mishnah that they brought on the 20th of Tammuz the Eitzim, and there was a Mishpacha Achas, another family that brought the Eitzim twice a year. So there's only one family that brought the Eitzim twice a year. And why they called Bnei Pachas Moav, says Rabbi Meir, that they were the Tzetzaim of Rus HaMoiva. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Bnei Pachas Moav ben Yehuda, Hein Hein, Bnei Yoav ben Truya. These are none other than the children of the Sartzov of David HaMelech by the name of Yoav. And Yoav also, since he was related to David, his mother was actually David HaMelech's sister. He too was a descendant of Rus, who came from Moab. The Esrim Be'el Bnei Adin ben Yehuda. On the 20th of El, Tan Rabbanan, Bnei Adin ben Yehuda, Hein Hein Bnei David ben Yehuda. The same group of descendants of David who brought the Eitzim on the 20th of Tammuz would bring the Eitzim on the 20th of El. And they are called Bnei Adin because David HaMelech in Shmuel Beis is called Adino Ha'etzni. And all this is Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Hein Hein Bnei Yoav ben Sruya. That the phrase Adino Ha'etzni is not a reference to David, but rather to Yoav. The Mishnah says, V'yechad b'teves shavu b'nei Parosh shnia. The Mishnah seems to say that only b'nei Parosh brought Eitzim twice, not any other mishpacha. Mani Masnisan, who is the author of our Mishnah, Lo Rabbi Meir, Lo Rabbi Yehuda, Lo Rabbi Yosef, Ik Rabbi Meir. If you're going to tell me that Bnei Pachas, Moav, Ben Yehuda, that brought the Eitzim on the 20th of Av, they are the Bnei David Ben Yehuda, who had already brought the Gizrei Eitzim on the 20th of Tammuz, then listening, it should have said, Bi Esrim, Bi Av, Shavu, Bnei David Ben Yehuda Shnia. The same language that you use with regard to the Bnei Parosh, you should have used with regard to the Bnei David. Ve'ikar Rabbi Yehuda, if the Bnei Adin Ben Yehuda that brought the Eitzim on the 20th of El, they are the Bnei Yehuda Bnei David Ben Yehuda, is kasha, then I don't understand. Listening, it should have said with regard to Esrim Elul, Shavu Bnei David Ben Yehuda Shnia, that the children, the offspring of David, came back for a second round. Ve'i Rabbi Yossi, and if you're going to tell me that this brisa reflects the Shita Rabbi Yossi, and Bnei Pachas Moav, who brought on the 20th of Av, and the Bnei Adin, they brought on the 20th of El. Is listening, Shavu Bnei Yoav Ben Sruya Shnia. It doesn't say Shavu, except for Bnei Parosh. So the Mishnah doesn't hold like any other of the Tanoim that we have. So whose Shita does it reflect? So Gemara answers Liolam, Rabbi Yossi betrayed Tanoi, I'll leave the Rabbi Yossi. So in the brisa that says Achas shebnei Pachas Moav, Haim bnei Yoav ben Tzruya, and another brisa in the name of Rabbi Yossi, it says the bnei Adin ben Yehuda are the bnei Yoav ben Tzruya. It's not another sheet of a different Tana who holds with regard to Rabbi Yossi that bnei Pachas, bnei Adin were one mishpacha. But rather, these are shitos of two different Tanoim that debate with regard to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. The Tana, the first brisa, holds in the framework of Rabbi Yossi that only the bnei Pachas were bnei Yoav, but bnei Adin were mishpachas mishpacha cheres, and that's not the mishpacha bnei David ben Yehuda. But Tana shal brisa shniya, but the Tana of the second brisa that said that bnei Adin or bnei Yoav, he holds that bnei Pachas Moav are the bnei mishpacha cheres. They're not for the mishpacha of bnei David ben Yehuda, and it comes out according to the opinion of both of them. Bnei Yoav did not bring their Nidavas Eitzim 2 times, only Parush, and therefore the Mishnah reflects that opinion of the Brisa in the name of Rabbi Yosef. The Echad b'Teves lo hoya bo mamad. What was unique about Rosh Chodesh Teves? It had Hallel, Korban Musaf, and Korban Eitzim. And now the Gemara is going to analyze the sheet of Rabbi Yeshua and our Mishnah that Hallel overrides the Mamad of Shachris, Musaf overrides the Mamad of Mincha, and what's the reasoning behind this? And then we're going to bring another Tana who holds that the Olam Ein Yom Shekol HaMamados Lidachmo. It can't be a day when we reject all the Mamados. We have to have Mamados, a minimum Mamados on each day. Amalei Mar Keshisha, oh, we have to underline Keshisha, because that's going to come up. Braid Rav Chizdol Rav Ashi,